Well, a hearty good evening to everyone, and what a wonderful crowd tonight to watch the people's business. We're excited to have you here. This is the City of Sioux Falls City Council meeting. Today's date is Monday, April 4th. I'd like to start off tonight's meeting by recognizing the City Council members who are here. If we could have a roll call, please.
Council members Intiman.
Here.
Erpenbach.
Here.
Jamison.
Here.
Rolfing.
Here.
Aguilar.
Here.
Anderson.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Thank you, City Council. We do have 7 members present. That's enough to do tonight's business. We will start with an invocation, as we always do. We're so blessed to have Pastor Al Perret, Sr., with the Volunteers of America Dakotas here in Sioux Falls. And what we'd like you to do is stand for the blessing that Pastor Al will give, and then we'd like to follow that up with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
Good evening. My name is Pastor Al Pratt. Like Mayor Mike said, I am also a chaplain at the South Dakota State Penitentiary, Director of Volunteer Program, and Director of the Reentry Program for Second Chance Mentoring Ex-Offenders. Volunteers of America Dakotas would just love to have this opportunity to open up in prayer and thoughtful reflection. Would you please join me in this as we bow our heads? Almighty God, who has made of one blood all nations to dwell on the face of the earth, deepen among us the spirit of understanding and goodwill. Take from the hearts of the people of Sioux Falls and the rulers of all partial aims, unhallowed ambitions, jealousies, covetousness, and fears, and bring peace to this place. Now you will confirm the bonds of mutual trust and unite us in the things that make for peace, the pursuit of knowledge, the spread of liberty, and good government. Anoint all who are here with humility and grace. For we give to you these leaders that would become your servants in a few moments to seek that proper order and support of all in accordance to your will. We pray for the mayor that his judgment be sound and pleasing to your spirit. And in ending, let this council be your spirit in election and process. Thank you, Almighty God. We release our spirits to you. In Jesus Christ's name I pray. Amen. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, again, good evening, everybody, and it's so great to have you all here tonight. We do have one proclamation, and I'd like to introduce you to the person who helps lead the public health efforts of our city. Her name is Jill Franken. Jill, if you'd come forward, and please bring your team, too. This is a proclamation, whereas the week of April 4th through the 10th is National Public Health Week, and the theme is Safety is No Accident, Live Injury-Free. Whereas each year, nearly 150,000 people die from injuries, and almost 30 million are injured seriously enough to go to the emergency room. Whereas unintentional injuries, such as motor vehicle crashes, poisonings, and burns, rank among the top 10 causes of death for people ages 1 through 44. Whereas the financial costs of injuries are staggering, accounting for 12% of annual medical care spending and totaling as much as $69 billion per year. Whereas injuries, unexpected events, and violence affect people at home, at work, in their communities, on the move, and even at play. Whereas many injuries and associated costs can be proactively prevented by taking actions such as wearing a seatbelt, properly installing smoke alarms, correctly installing and using child safety seats, wearing a helmet, storing cleaning supplies in locked cabinets, and educating the community about violence and maltreatment towards children, seniors, and other vulnerable populations. Now, therefore, I, Mike Huther, Mayor of the City of Sioux Falls, do hereby proclaim the week of April 4th through the 10th, 2011, as National Public Health Week 2011 in Sioux Falls, and call upon the people of this great city to observe this month by helping our families, friends, neighbors, co-workers, and leaders better understand the importance of public health to a successful health system in light of this year's theme, Safety is no accident. Live injury-free. Jill, congratulations. Jill, thank you, and Pastor Al, thanks for the wonderful prayer. Certainly appreciate it. Let's now move on to tonight's business. I'd like to start with the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Entman.
I need to excuse myself for consideration of the consent agenda.
Thank you, Councilor Entman. Thank you. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
So moved, Erpenbach.
Second, Aguilar.
There's been a motion by Councilor Offenbach, seconded by Councilor Aguilar to approve tonight's consent agenda. Any discussion? If we could have a roll call vote, please.
Council members Erpenbach,
Yes.
Jamison,
Yes.
Rolfing,
Yes.
Aguilar,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
That is passed 6-0. Thank you. Councilor Henry, welcome back. Would now like to review tonight's regular agenda. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve tonight's regular agenda?
So moved, Brown. Second, Anderson.
Councilor Brown's made a motion to approve tonight's regular agenda. It was seconded by Councilor Anderson, Jr. Is there any further discussion? A roll call vote, please.
Council members Intamin,
Yes.
Erpenbach,
Yes.
Jamison,
Yes.
Rolfing,
Yes.
Aguilar,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
That is passed 7-0. Thank you. Again, I'd like to welcome you all here to tonight's City Council meeting. It's going to be a fun one and a really, really important one for our great city. So thank you all for making the effort to come here tonight. This is a great opportunity for you to address your City Council. If there's anybody here who'd like to come to the podium, all we'd ask is you just state your name and present anything that you'd like to the City Council. We'd ask you to keep it to 5 minutes if possible. And just like to remind you, it's not a Q&A session or a question and answer session, but it's a great opportunity for you to engage this council. Welcome.
Mr. Mayor and councilors, my name is Bob Sievertson. And what I would like to do, Mr. Mayor, is talk about the event center, the politics of the event center, first of all, and then possibly after that offer some suggestions on how to bring it about. I know a little something about local politics. I've been around this town for a long time, but I want to specifically talk about the politics of the event center. The downtown, proposed downtown site is a really tough sell. Testimony from the professionals was that the parking and traffic wouldn't be a major problem. I think that's a tough sell to the people. And it's divisive in that if it goes on the ballot at the arena site, that might be a tough sell. But I think it's kind of a moot question. I don't think it'll pass, no matter where it's suggested to be. This is a tough time for taxes in this country. And the suggestion that we're going to pay $100 million on regressive taxes on sales and property probably will not sell. And Councilor Erpenbach has mentioned before whether the election is in late November or early next year, we're going to be faced with with 2% cut in teacher salaries, some layoffs of teachers, an increase in water fees, license fees in the county. And I don't think it'll sail. I think it's a loser. There are people in this town that are probably not conservative or progressive, but they just like it the way the town was, 20 or 30 years ago, and that's a tough vote to get those people. So the question on whether what kind of vote it takes, an official of the city told me that you could buy with 50% of the vote, or one vote more than 50%, because the traditional vote is 60% of bond issue. No, I don't know if what's legal. So I think, respectfully, that this city has got to get more private money in the construction of the event center. Of course, the obvious place for private money is naming rights. But couldn't you also sell sections of the seating, to a bank or to a fast food outfit? But I think that outfits like the Sioux Falls Chamber of Commerce, Forward Sioux Falls, should get some skin in the game. Get some skin in the game. Particularly those, the people with motel or restaurant, bars, construction, raise some money, get some skin in the game. I also think that there are working people, those good people in trades and labor, particularly the construction people there, have an interest in a progressive event center. I heard from a professional during the afternoon meeting on the event center tell of the jobs that would be created. They were impressive. The reason I knew he was an expert, he was from out of town. But not only, it seems to me that the direct jobs created by the event center, that the building trades, the plumbers and the carpenters and the electricians have an interest in the long range, and they should put some skin in the game. I believe that the concert goers that you speak of, you see Sioux Falls license around the Tyson Center, and they travel to Omaha and points further than that. They should get some skin in the game. I believe that the jocks, the people that attend athletic events, as a source of private money. I also think, this might be a little idealistic, that is there a possibility for a public appeal for private funds? People like myself, probably. I haven't been in the arena in a number of years. I probably won't, but I'm interested in the well-being of this town, and I would like to contribute $35-50 to it. Now, I know the mathematics. I know the arithmetic. When you're talking about tens of millions of dollars, it takes a lot of those $50 donations to make a dent. But if they make a contribution, they're salesmen for the event center. So they make sure that their friends are going to vote for the center. So that's about it. Just to sum up, it seems to me that the major player to see whether this thing goes or not is the business community. The Chamber of Commerce has to get get some sweat in this thing. If they don't, maybe we can try again in 4 or 5 years.
Mr. Stevenson, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Would anybody else like to speak to the City Council? Ms. Daly, welcome.
These past years,
Ma'am,
I've
can you
listened.
just state your name to
Teresa Staley.
Thank you.
Teresa Staley, Sioux Falls. These past years, I've listened to all of your campaign messages and your promises, and I know that you all have your own special interests. Some of you have business interests. Some of you are interested in promoting the arts and different sporting activities, and some of you have real estate interests in our city. But the one thing that you all have in common is that you are the stewards of our checkbook, the citizens' checkbook and our savings account, and also, hopefully, you have the well-being and the best interest of every citizen in our city, no matter what their economic position may be. I'm here today, and I also hope you're very open-minded and willing to take a stand when something doesn't make sense. And I'm here today because I'm concerned about this water increase situation. And I think we need to keep in mind the big picture. And as you see up there, and I hope the viewers at home can see the big picture, this was given to you today by Mark Cotter. And we see that we are going towards a 77% increase in the water bill since 2007. And then they're pressing on to the 85% in 2012. And the goal will be a 93% increase in our water bill. And I know Councilman Vernon Brown said today that we didn't have an increase for several years, but I think that's something to brag about when we keep our water usage rates low for our people. I would urge the people at home, call the water department and get a copy of your bill. Last Friday, I got a copy of 3 different families' water bills. I teach piano, and I asked if I could get them, and they said yes, they all have children. And I got a copy of their history from 2007 until today. I also got my own history. I'm single, so I don't use a whole lot of water. But so I got this, and it was very interesting. And would you go to the next? We talked today. You got this 2011 summary. Now, Mark Cotter is talking about 7 consumptions. And a lot of people don't know how to read their water bill, but you want to look at what your consumption is. So, Mark, and I'm not sure where you got the $20.85. That's half of the bill? Is that correct? Okay. Well, the people, the Booman family, they have 2 adults, 2 elementary children, and 2 small children. So they're not using as much water as like high school kids would use. Their kids take a bath less frequently, those little ones. But as of February 5th, they used 7 consumptions of water, and their bill was $44.27. So it's more than what Mr. Cotter had up there. Now, back to 2007, if you look up there, they paid $26 for their water bill. So they're paying $18 more per month, which comes out to $216 a year increase. That's above what they're paying ordinarily. Now that's the low estimate. That's the winter usage. So they are actually paying a lot more than that during the summertime, and that rate will fluctuate. Then let's go to the next slide there. I also have another family that has high school kids, number 3 there. And these people, their lowest usage was 10 consumptions. The Monson family, they have 2 adults, 2 teens, and 1 elementary student. Excellent students, by the way, piano students. Okay, so we've got, as of March 3rd, they had 10 consumptions. They're paying the city $61.22. And back in 2007, and their kids were smaller then, but they paid $33. So they're paying $28 more a month, and they're paying $335 more a year. That's a big increase. Over and above, they're already probably paying another $500 to use. So they're paying the city like $800 some dollars to use the water. Now, I know that most of you can afford these increases. In fact, I've talked with some of you. You don't seem to think it's a very big deal. And there's probably a lot of people in this room who can afford to pay an extra $250 to $400 a year. But there are many people in our city who cannot afford this, and they're struggling. I visited today with some retired neighbors about this water issue, and they said, you know, Teresa, we haven't had an increase in our Social Security for 2 years. We're on a fixed income. I had a conversation with a neighbor who owns an electric construction company, and he said that his workers he had to cut them back to 4 days a week or lay people off because things are so slow. I work at USF. We had to take a pay cut. I also have not raised my own rates with my students in the last 3 years because I'm sensitive to the economy. We need to be sensitive as a city. The ability to take a bath, use the toilet, have drinking water, these are all basic necessities. And I think our city should be doing everything possible to provide quality service at the best price and to show the citizens that we're going to be very efficient in using the money that we're taking in. You know, on that chart that we got, we were talking about these cities who have higher rates than us and lower rates than us. One of the cities that had a lower rate, and ironically, the same state that the consultant came from, was Fargo, North Dakota. Fargo, where we tout this Fargo Dome, we're looking to Fargo as our inspiration. Let's look to Fargo as the inspiration in how they treat their citizens. They keep the fees low. I understand we want to make money. And if you can make money on parking tickets, go for it. If you can make money on an event center, yes, we want you to make money, but not on the backs of water usage. And Vernon, you said today that you are in the business. Our water is supposed to be a business. It's also a monopoly. It's the only business in town. We don't have any competition. So let's work to keep things reasonable for the people. And I know the damage is already done, but you can stop the bleeding and do not vote for this increase. I beg you to consider this. Show us that you care. Thank you.
Ms. Staley, thank you very much. Mr. Stenga, would you like to come forward?
How are we doing tonight? Tim Stanga. You guys got a big thing tonight on who's going to take the position. I'm hoping that me and you are on the right page because I made my selection already. And I'm hoping that I'm on the right page that you guys are on because I have watched Channel 16. I watch and I listen to what's going on, and I got the guy picked. So we'll find out if we're on the right page or not. I guess the thing is, I'm going to hit the potholes again. This will be the second time. When we walk up to a pothole, we take a shovel full of whatever they're putting in it, throw it on the hole, and then walk to the next one. Again, I'm tired of washing my car off. I want to know who I got to send the bill to because tar doesn't come off very easy. People are tired of doing the city's job by tamping the tar in the hole. Let's get something done. These holes have been filled 3 or 4 times already. You know, if we got that kind of money to spend in this town, we got people that are sitting in lines to get food. Let's pay them to go out and fill them right. When it comes down to, somebody says, when is it the best time to build an event center? Best time to build an event center is when people are employed. They're working 40 to 45 hours a week. They're able to pay their bills. They're not sitting in line for food. And the roads are up to par. And our sewer system is complete. That might be the time to look at an event center. I had a guy come up to me and state that he's going to go to the Swiftel Center for a concert. Went and bought tickets. I think it was Willie Nelson, I'm not 100% sure. Maximum capacity that they're selling on tickets, from what I understand, is 5,300 tickets. We're looking at a 1,200 seat event center. They got 5,300, so far from arena the way it is right now. I'm hoping that we get a scoreboard for the arena. I'm hoping that you guys put that on your calendar. I'm hoping that you guys will stand up and take care of our building that we have already, so that way people can enjoy the arena. Like I say, a lot of things aren't being answered. I went for the question and answer over at the school 2 weeks ago. Really and truthfully, did I get any answers? No. All I got was, well, I'm only the architect, or I'm only this guy, or I'm only this guy. I can't answer your question. If you can't answer questions, why put on this kind of a show at a school when nobody can answer a question? And it just bothers me on if it's just politics that's being done, or do we really want to get this event center? One thing that I do know, that if the event center does go, I'm hoping that we come up with a brick program to where people can buy bricks with their names on them. So that way these people can buy the bricks, they can put it into that building, and they can be part of that event center. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Mr. Stinger, thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the audience you'd like to speak to the City Council tonight? Well, thank you. Thank you very much for being here. We'll move on with item number 25.
Second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property at 700 North Main Avenue from the C2 General Commercial District to the C3 Central Business District, petition number 2011-0112, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval.
Good evening, Mike Cooper, representing Planning and Building Services. We have a petition tonight from the Ransom Church. They are proposing to occupy a vacant building within the downtown area, which was formerly occupied by Crescent Electric. The building sits on the east side of North Main Avenue and north of the 3rd Street right-of-way. This is within the identified boundaries of our downtown area. They are proposing to rezone this from a C2 general commercial zoning district to the C3 central business zoning district. As I said, this is within our downtown defined boundary, and the Planning Commission has recommended approval of this rezoning request because we feel that it is an appropriate change. One of the comments that was made at first reading and at the Planning Commission meeting is that with a church in the downtown district, there are no off-street parking requirements. And the philosophy of that goes back to that typically the church's services are held either on weekends or in evenings, and that there is usually an abundance of parking nearby within the downtown area, either on the streets or on adjacent parking lots. So our zoning district, or zoning ordinance, I should say, has never required parking for downtown churches. But having said that, we did ask the petitioner to be here tonight to give you, the councilors, a little more explanation of what they plan to do with the building and what they do plan to do for parking during the use of this facility. So I'm hoping that there is somebody here tonight that can speak to those questions. But again, the Planning Commission has recommended approval of this rezoning request.
Mr. Cooper, thank you very much. Folks, this is a second reading, so you do have the opportunity to speak to the council if you would like. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak for or against this item? Very good. City Council? Oh, there is someone. Oh, please, would you like to speak to the City Council? We'd love to have you do it. Great. Welcome.
My name is Phil Tagg. I'm the pastor of the Ransom Church, and as far as parking, I've been in contact just with Terry Van Dyke is a member of our congregation and has just kind of been helping us through that process. He did today talk to Claudia from City Lots, and she referred him then to Ken McFarland from the county, and he had given us a verbal okay. A few months back, we were asking that same question. The question we asked was that southwest lot, or the lot southwest of the building, would that be available for parking on a Sunday? Is it public access parking? And he did confirm that. We tried to get something in writing today that would confirm that, but Ken is in the hospital, unfortunately. And so he was unable to do that, but he will have that to us in a few days. We do also, we're open to buying, if there were properties to the north of the building that would open up and there'd be an opportunity there, we'd consider that for parking. We're also in contact with Craig Lloyd, who does own, south of us, and whether that street in between were vacated or public, there'd be hopefully some during the week parking that would open up that would be alleviate, Monday through Friday daytime parking. But we just hadn't done anything with that specifically yet because we didn't know what would, we're trying to have a good partnership with Craig there. So,
Council, any questions for Pastor Tang? Is there anyone else? Yes.
I have one for Mike Cooper.
Please. Oh, Michael?
Mike, have we discussed any parking in the building across the street, which I believe isn't that owned by the city, or is that owned by the county? The old gray bar?
Yeah, that parking lot is, can you show that on that's city-owned.
Have we discussed that use of that at all, or?
I have not had a chance to talk to the applicant about that, but I think we could certainly sit down and work out kind of a parking plan before they start to make renovations to the building. I think that would be the next step that would be appropriate.
Do they have any parking to the south side of that building? That used to be a loading dock there?
Yeah, Crescent Electric used that for parking. As part of the Uptown development, there is going to be a residential development to the south of there. There is still right-of-way that would be 3rd Street. And again, the plan is to eventually put a street through there over to Phillips Avenue. So that parking that you see there now probably will not be there in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Council, any further questions, or would anybody like to make a motion?
Move to approve, Brown.
Second, Rolfing.
Councilor Brown has made a motion to approve item number 25. It was seconded by Councilor Rolfing. Any further discussion? A roll call vote, please.
Council members Entman?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
That is passed 7-0. Item 26.
Second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, a major amendment, petition number 2011-0111 to Chapter 15.45.070, Plan Development Districts at 3400 West 69th Street, amending the 69th and Louise Plan Development District sub-area regulations. The Planning Commission recommends approval.
This is a parcel of land that's approximately 3 acres in size that's currently vacant. And we're in the area west of Louise Avenue and north of 69th Street along Avera Drive. The petitioner is Lee Howell with Howell Hospitality Incorporated, and the proposal is to add within this planned development zoning district the permitted uses including hotel, motel. And the preliminary information is that this is proposed to be a future Holiday Inn Express, and although we don't have final building plans, it's somewhere in that approximate range of around 88 rooms, but that potentially could change. They believe that there's a good market for this use because of not only the proximity to the interstate, but also because of the medical facilities and other development in the area that would generate the demand for this type of a land use. And the Planning Commission is recommending approval of this amendment to the zoning ordinance.
Mr. Cooper, would Mr. Howell like to talk to this? Do you know?
You want to say anything? I think only if you have questions, maybe.
Very good. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak to this item? The City Council?
Move to approve, Entman.
There has been a motion to approve the item. Is there a second?
I'll second it, Anderson.
There is a motion made by Councilor Entenmann. It was seconded by Councilor Aguilar. Councilor Rolfing.
Thank you. Mike, what else under this zoning regulation could go in there besides the hotel?
Well, under the current zoning, it allows offices, retail, trade when in conjunction with wholesaling or manufacturing, warehousing, indoor recreational facilities, public utility facilities. So those are the main uses that are in the area. Primarily, it's developed as an office and some retail.
Okay, and now with this change, it would go to what?
We would be adding, within the list of permitted uses, we would be adding hotel and motel.
If it would be developed again, if this would fall through, they could would they change, they could change it to any one of those things then?
They could change it to anything that's currently listed within that zoning
They would
district.
come back before this board, though?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Hearing no further questions or comments, a roll call vote, please.
Council members Intiman.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Jamison.
Yes.
Rolfing.
Yes.
Aguilar.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Thank you. That is passed 7-0. Item 27.
Second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, correcting clerical errors in certain rezoning ordinances. The Planning Commission recommends approval.
This is an item that we are asking council to correct two previous zoning items that were approved by council that did not have the correct legal descriptions. One of them is kind of shown in the Whittier neighborhood, and the other one is on South Minnesota Avenue. We do a lot of these throughout the year, and as we go through the final check, after they've been published, we typically bring these back for city council action. So tonight we have two of these items that we're asking you to approve with the corrected legal descriptions.
Mr. Cooper, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak to item 27? City Council, would anybody like to make a motion?
Move approval, Erpenbach.
Second, Rolfing.
Councilor Erbenbach's made a motion to approve item 27. It was seconded by Councilor Rolfing. Any further discussion? A roll call vote, please.
Council members Intiman.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Jamison.
Yes.
Rolfing.
Yes.
Aguilar.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Thank you. That is passed 7-0. Item 28.
Second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the revised ordinances of the city by revising public hearing standards and fees. The Planning Commission recommends approval.
Last year, the planning staff was asked by members of the council to take a look at our notification process for items that go to either the Planning Commission or City Council involving land use proposals. And Jeff Schmidt, who is in the audience, helped put together a task force, a study committee of representatives of the community that included citizens, representatives of development, home builders, others, to take a look at some options for consideration. And we've gone through a review with the Land Use Committee. We've talked a lot about the type of signs, the size of signs, where they should be posted and how long, and other ways of notification, including requirements for neighborhood meetings. After a lot of review and recommendation, tonight what's being proposed to the City Council would be a three-part modification to our current public notice process. The first change would be that we would be expanding the number of days that a notice is required from 7 to 10. And those include the posting of the signs, as well as the public notice that's put into the legal newspaper by planning staff. So those would go from 7 days to 10 days. The second change is that the planning staff would now be responsible for sending out a written notice prior to Planning Commission and prior to City Council. And that written notice would go to property owners within 300 feet of any action item that's being considered. And that would also be a 10-day written notice. And then the third change is that we would like to update our fee schedule to help cover the cost of administrative changes, including the written notification. And we would do an across-the-board increase of our fees by $50. The last time we updated our fees for various types of applications was around 2005. So it's been about 6 years since we've asked the City Council to modify those fees. So again, we're changing the length of the notification process by adding another 3 days. I think the big change is the written notification, because in our minds, as we've looked at other municipalities, that's very common practice to do that. And we know that there's still going to be chances that we could miss somebody, either because our property information database is not 100% up to date, or people might be gone during the public hearing process. But we believe that that's a good way to let people aware of what's going on. And then again, I think the administration fee makes sense, that it helps us keep up with the cost of dealing with these zoning items. I also mentioned before that we're going to be doing an experimental process of including on some of our postings what's called a QR code. And a QR code is used in many places throughout the country that if people have smartphones, they can click on to this QR code and they will be able to find out more information about a particular item. And some places put these on building permits. They put them on other types of public notification signs. And so we're going to use this as an experiment of working with our IT folks to see how this could work. If it is successful, eventually we could have the entire staff report that goes to Planning Commission and to City Council available just by the click of a camera on your smartphone. So those are some of the technological things that we're also investigating along with the traditional posting of the signs and the written notice. So that's a long explanation of our proposal tonight, which has been recommended for approval by the Planning Commission as well as the City Council Land Use Committee. At first reading, I did indicate that we did have testimony at the Planning Commission public hearing from representatives of home builders and developers that did have concerns about these additional steps in the process, that historically we have very few items that are controversial or that people don't know about. And so, again, that was the testimony that we heard, but the recommendation by the Planning Commission is to move ahead with these changes to our public notice process. That's it.
Mr. Cooper, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak to this particular item? Welcome, Todd.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. Todd Anowski with the Home Builders Association of the Sioux Empire. And as Director Cooper mentioned, we did have some of our members participating on the public notification stakeholder meeting group. I believe our meetings were held this winter and fall and even stretched back to the early summer months. But as the group met, one of the questions that our industry has was, is the current notification system broken? And if so, what might be the problems with the system? And so for your consideration, just a few questions. Currently, developers are required to post the signs on the four corners of a property. And, well, is the public not being notified because the sign may fall down and blow away? Well, if it's windy like today or this past weekend, yeah, maybe that's the case. If there's a blizzard or bad weather, yes, it is possible that the weather does affect a sign placement and the sign could get ripped from the stake. I believe we talked about reinforcing the sign just so it would withstand those elements better. But generally speaking, we thought that the current sign was very reasonable and the public was aware of the sign when a property was being looked at for further development. I would also ask the council, how many calls are you receiving from the public in regards to controversial items? Sometimes it may be quite a few calls. Other times you may not get any. Our point would be that, again, the existing system is working fine and adequately. If there's not a problem, why try and create something that's not needed? Also, the planning department, I'm sure if individuals are interested in a particular project, they would be calling the planning department. I can't speak for the department, but I'm just assuming that they do get a fairly good amount of calls from concerned citizens, just like you on the city council and mayor do as well. Lastly, my other question for concern is the Planning Commission meeting itself. I attended last month's Planning Commission meeting to speak on this item. Councilmember Anderson was also in attendance on an item. that dealt with, I believe, if memory serves me correctly, an auto salvage yard. And just by the nature of that item, some might say it was a controversial item, but we did have a good showing from the public for that item. And so again, I'd make the point that the existing ordinance is serving its purpose. From time to time, do we miss a particular person? Sure, I'm sure we do. But our point again is that the existing ordinance does work. I just have a couple more points to touch on. Again, Director Cooper mentioned some of the changes that would result with the ordinance being adopted. The permit application would increase by $50. That's on top of a $350 permit right now. That would make it $400 per application. Again, some would argue that's not a very significant increase, but if you're a land developer who develops lots of property, you would start to feel the effect of that. Maybe not in 1 year, but going forward in future years. Mike also mentioned the posting time from 7 days to 10 business days. Again, business days being the key. That would be a 2-week process, and that's in addition to the time that the Planning Commission would review it, followed by your action on the City Council. In our building climate, we have a limited number of days to construct and build buildings. Again, some people might not think 3 days is a huge amount, but with our limited amount of a building time that we have, it does add to the regulation. Again, just for your consideration. And one final piece is the additional time and cost to the city for this process. You are creating additional regulation. That regulation has to be implemented by city staff. Mike mentioned that they're also updating the permit fee increase by $50 to help cover that expense. But again, you're having additional time spent by the planning department staff to collect those names, to send out the notification letter to impacted property owners. And again, our building time is limited, and that's probably going to be more in bunches in your activity when there's more building going on versus, say, in the dead of winter when there's not a whole lot of activity going on. So again, many in our industry believe the existing notification system works well for our community. We would encourage your support to maintain the existing ordinance. Thank you.
Mr. Ranowski, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to this item? City Council, would anybody like to make a motion?
I would move approval, Erpenbach.
Second, Brown.
Councilor Urbanbach's made a motion to approve number item 28. It was seconded by Councilor Brown. Is there any discussion on this item?
If I could, this is one of those things that those of us that are new to the council have been following for an entire year now, and I think it's a good compromise. You know, we spent a lot of time with neighbors who had concerns about, again, those weather issues when it comes to the notification process. What we've done is add a couple of days to that time, and we've added that mailing piece, and that to me is the most critical. The little code thing on the sign is really cool, but the main piece for me is that mailing, so that if I live within a certain space from that property, that I'm going to be notified. And I think that's a fair compromise for citizens involved in these processes. I'd ask you to vote yes for this one.
Councilor Jameson.
If I could add to that as well, there was I was involved in a lot of that discussion that occurred in the past. I think it all really stemmed from the fact that we had a development in a part of town where some of the citizens felt they weren't notified of it. And I would agree that what we're doing is probably a little over the top, but what we're trying to do is avoid that from ever happening and having neighbors say they didn't get notice. And even though there are a lot of checks and balances in place that catch those things, I believe it was the intent of the Land Use Committee and as others who have discussed this item, that we just don't want to fail again. So we're going to go a little further than we need to, is how I remember it.
Councilor Brown.
And I wouldn't even say it's going further. I think it's enhancing the transparency. I got to tell you, I'm a little disappointed that home builders wouldn't support transparency in people protecting their homes and their neighborhood.
City Council, thank you. If we could have a roll call vote, please.
Council members Intiman?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
That is passed 7-0. Item 29.
First reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls amending the revised ordinances of the city by amending Section 2-35, Powers of the Mayor, and Section 2-37, Administrative Organization of City Departments.
Councilor Erpenbach.
I just would just give you just a brief overview of where this one came from. Again, one that I've been working on for about a year now. It actually came as the beginning of this conversation was with a constituent before the election last year. His concern was about executive orders and how who is affected by an executive order. And so what we've done, there was a committee of us, Councilor Rolfing, Deborah Owen, our city clerk and chief of council operations, Bill O'Toole from the Human Resources, and Dave Fifley from the city attorney's office. We have actually gone page by page through the executive orders and looked at who they affect and what's the intent. And in some of those cases we've said, yep, that's exactly right. It affects city staff in the way that the mayor directs the people that work for the administration. Some of them we've said, you know what, this needs to be ordinance, and the council needs to control this a little bit better. It was kind of a fun process. We worked through it, as I said, page by page. This is the beginning then of some of the changes that you'll see. Basically, this one, the powers of the mayor, is part of our ordinance structure. We're just cleaning up the language to make it clear that we all understand. As the mayor jokingly said the other day, we're stripping him of his powers. We're not. We're just clarifying that, yes, executive orders are completely legal, but they really do apply to city staff, to departments of the administration as provided in charter. And I would invite you, if you haven't looked at it, it is available through the agenda on siouxfalls.org. But again, first reading, and it is the beginning of a long process. There are several other items that will come along as we progress through them.
Councilor Erpenbach, great job. And folks, this is a first reading, so you don't have the opportunity to speak to the council, but you do on the second reading. Any other further comments? Item 30.
First reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, supplementing the 2011 budget by providing appropriations and the means of financing for the Convention and Visitors Bureau Business Improvement District.
Councilor Intiman, thank you.
Just in case you were waiting for me, I'll take this one.
Thank you.
Anyway, this has been a process that we've been working on for quite a while. All the councilors are well aware of the funding of the CVB. And we have implemented a $2, first of the year, a $2 room tax on hotel room stays. And that money has been collected. Now we're just trying to move that money into the CVB. Actually, it's been kind of complicated in one respect. The CVB works on the same budget as the Chamber, which is a fiscal budget, which is October 1st through September 30th, okay? So what we're proposing here is that we approve the 9-month budget. Then what we're going to do is come in with a resolution on the part of the city at the next meeting also, which authorizes the annual spending from January through the end of December. And that'll be in a resolution form, I believe. So this is as clear as mud, but it is actually really great for the community as we go forward and being able to promote the city and being extremely aggressive in bringing in new outside business.
Councilor Inman, thank you so much. Would anyone on the City Council like to set a hearing date and the second reading for Monday, April 11th, 2011 at 7 p.m. for items 29 and 30?
So moved, Aguilar.
Second, Entenmann.
Councilor Aguilar has made that motion. It was seconded by Councilor Entenmann. Is there any further discussion? A roll call vote, please.
Council members Intiman?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
That is passed 7-0. Thank you. Item number 31.
First reading and ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the revised ordinances of the city, revising sewer utility rates and charges as found in Chapter 41 Utilities. Rate changes effective July 1, 2011.
Ms. Cotter, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Mark Cotter with the Office of Public Works. This builds on our presentation that we had today at the informational meeting, which was, I think, again, shows you the level of detail that we go through to make sure that we have a good, thorough analysis and that we are very conscious of the rates that our customers pay. After all, we're also customers of these rates. One of the things, and just to recap, as we moved away from the sewer collapse back in August, and we did the assessment of the sewer, and then we continually updated the community on what needed to be done to make sure that we can strengthen our sanitary sewer system. Much of that work has already been bid, and you'll really start to see a lot of that pipe start to go in the month of April and progress through the summer months. As we move forward, we do recommend accelerating more sewer work, which will not only require more revenue to manage the cash flow, but also pay the ultimate debt service. And so as we looked at a number of different scenarios with our rate consultant, this is the recommendation that we would come to you on. It is a unique situation that we would recommend a mid-year rate adjustment, but again, not only for the health of the fund, but also for the effect on our ratepayers is why we're here tonight. We are going to condense the presentation significantly than what we did earlier. Trent will cover the recent capital improvements. Steve Burrian will cover the analysis, and then we'll move forward. Trent?
Just want to talk about drivers for the rate increase. This afternoon we went through kind of the backbone and the nuts and bolts of the wastewater operation, but the real drivers for the rate increase are these capital projects that we move forward. The big one, we've talked about it a lot, Central Main sanitary sewer. That's one that the assessment identified as a deficient sewer. It had a 4 and 5 levels of deficiency or structural weakness in the sanitary sewer. It was a project that we had identified in the past, but we had spread those projects out in 6 segments from 2003 through 2013. Given the status of the pipe, what we saw with the assessment, we asked you to give us the authority to borrow some money and move those projects forward. As Mark said earlier tonight, pipe is going on the ground to start bypassing those projects, and within the next couple of weeks we'll be shoveling dirt and putting pipe in the ground. Pipe is already arriving on site. 2 truckloads of pipe are arriving per day. So that's one of the main drivers there. It's a very expensive capital project. It's a very aggressive schedule for us to put 60-inch pipe into the ground, to put 15,000 feet of this large diameter pipe into the ground. Again, it's our backbone. It's what carries most of the wastewater to the wastewater treatment plant from the south and center portions of the city. The other future project that we're looking at is Sioux River South. And if we go a couple of slides forward, Sioux River South is a smaller trunk line sewer to the Central Main sewer, and it actually takes the wastewater up from a portion of the southwest part of town and most of the south portion of town. This is the trunk line that serves the Tut Hill lift station. If you look at the graphic that's up there, the Tut Hill lift station is on the right of the graphic. This is now 42-inch reinforced concrete pipe. It will be upsized to a 54-inch concrete reinforced pipe. And as you move to the left of the graphic, there's a little red line or a sewer line that goes up to the north, that goes up to 41st Street along Duluth Avenue. That line is actually a line that we're upsizing or taking some flow that would normally have gone east through the Pam Road area, and we're moving it down south into the larger pipe. That should provide, our flow modelers are telling us, that should provide some relief for the people on Pam Road and not take as much flow down that pipe. It's kind of a condensed version of what we talked about this afternoon, and I would like to turn it over to Steve to talk about the recommended rate increases. Thank you.
Question.
Thank you.
Mayor Hewitt, members of the City Council, my name is Steve Burrian. I'm with AH West, an engineering consultant who has been doing your water reclamation rate utility work. I had the bulk of the slides this afternoon, so I'll do my best of trying to winnow that down to something skinnier. There you I am here this evening on behalf of the staff and the engineering consultant to recommend two increases. One, a mid-year increase for the water reclamation utility on July 1st of 2011 of 5%, and a second one, which is the more customary one, on January 1st of 2012 of 8%. I'll just quickly bounce through these. We talked previously this afternoon about how we always have to start by reconciling our projections to our actual. This is the graph that does that for both revenues and expenses. You can see that the unrestricted cash balance to the far right jumped quite a bit in 2010, but the biggest impact on that was unspent capital, which is really encumbered for delayed projects. And so, in a nutshell, we were very close to projections and actual in 2010. As part of our utility rate work, we always need to look out into the future to project both revenues as well as revenue growth as well as expenses. You can see within the growth of the community, we're generally looking at about a 1% growth in the number of households, and then flattening out our flows and bumping that up to 1% over time. On an inflation basis, we're looking at, for general type services, somewhere between 4 and 5% beyond 2012. And for those things that tend to be real squirrely within utilities, we're looking at something higher, 10% per year. The next graphic was merely meant to show you that we have about an $8.6 million utility on an O&M basis, and then about half of the costs are in people, with the other half split up between 4 or 5 other categories. We also tracked carefully the debt within your utility. You have a very healthy utility in terms of debt. This graphic shows that you're going to have a bump to take advantage, or in response to the project that you're looking at building right now. That will go down steadily over time. When you look at doing a future project out there, which is the East Side Sanitary Sewer Treatment Plant, that bump will go up again and then slowly dip down, remaining within that healthy range for the utility. In all of our work, we also try to maintain reserves. One is a 90-day operating reserve, and one is a capital reserve for bumps in capital that is based on 15% of the average capital improvements plan. We're getting down, I guess, to the meat of the recommendations. This graphic is a relatively complicated one, but it's one that shows dollars versus time on one axis, and then rate increases versus time on the other. You can see with the 3% increase you've already implemented in 2011, coupled with a 5% rate increase that we're recommending, that jumps to 8% in 2011. In order to meet all of your cash demands as well as to meet your reserve requirements, which are the targets that we've shown on here, we're projecting you'll need a series of additional 8% increases, then 1.7%, and then down to more of inflationary increases of 3 to 4%. On this, the only two recommendations we're making are the supplemental bump in 2011 of 3% and the 8% bump in 2012. The others will be analyzed on an annual basis for your consideration. This graphic shows that the total increase for 2012 and over 2011 is about $3.6 million, with almost all of that in capital, very little in O&M. In the lower left, you can see that the revenue increase that we're proposing for 2012 is only $2.2 million, so we're actually having to use that cash reserve that we've recommended that you maintain in order to take some of the bump off of 2012 and smooth the rate increases over time. The next few slides show the actual rate increases both for 11 and 12. This one is for 4 different customer classes, and you can see we're recommending the across-the-board 5% increase for both meter and flow, and you can see the resulting rates that stem from that. If we switch over to industrial strength and the external discharges to the community, for the industrial strength, we did not feel that the increases, the things that are being increased for in 2011 are really strength-based, and so we recommended no increase for industrial strength. And per your contracts with the external discharges, we were not capable of increasing those utilities in 2011 as a supplement. Each of those customer classes do have different costs of service, and so on the next graph you can see for the first 3, residential, commercial, industrial, we do recommend an 8% increase for all of those for both meter and flow. But for the high-strength industrial, where we haven't quite caught up on their cost of service, in other words, they're not bringing in quite enough revenue to meet their cost of service, we're recommending a 16% increase for both meter and flow. That translates over into the next graphic, where we're recommending the same 16% increase for all of your strength categories for industry. And then because 2 of the outside external dischargers don't utilize much of the collection system, We're recommending a much smaller increase for them at 2%. For Brandon, you have a requirement with them contractually that you can only raise their rates every other year, so we left that at 0. And then for Harrisburg, you have a very specific contract negotiation that you implemented with them, and we only needed a 3% increase in order to maintain cost of service. This graphic was showed to you previously. It does show you the history of rate increases. As discussed at the previous informational meeting, you did have a series of years where you didn't have any rate increases within this utility. You got into what I would call, in lay terms, a pinch. As a result, then you had a series of double-digit increases. We thought we'd be able to curtail that down to inflationary increases from 11 and on, and then we had the flood and the sewer problems in August of last year, which forced us to accelerate quite a few of the capital improvements, which also forced us to recommend these more significant rate increases than we had in the past. You also saw this graphic previously. It shows that for 2011 in the region, you're in the lower quartile of increases. With the increase we're proposing for mid-year 11, you'll remain at that similar point. And if nobody else raises their rates in 2012, which is highly unlikely, and you implement the 8% increase that we're recommending, you'll be somewhere near the 40th percentile. Moving then just to the bottom line, for the average residential water reclamation customers in your community, the 5% increase will translate to about $1.06 per month. And for the 2012 increase, with an 8% increase, that will translate to about $1.71. And so with that, Mark, do you want to provide some summary comments?
Steve, thank you.
Okay, thank you, City Council. And I would also say for the people that are in the audience and watching at home that there was a much longer, very good questions from the City Council at the informational meeting today. Also, just as a point that was brought up in open discussion, the numbers that were shown, those were shown as combined water and sewer bills. What we're talking about tonight is only the wastewater side. So a typical bill, this is very close to my personal family's usage, is in that $41 to $42, which is the total water and wastewater bill. Tonight what we're presenting to you is, as we always do, we isolate it, and these are just the sewer charge to have sewer charge every month.
Ms. Cotter, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And folks, this is again a first reading. What we'll do is, with the City Council's permission, we'll set a second reading date, and then at that time, all of the people of Sioux Falls, including all of you, will have an opportunity to speak again to the City Council.
Mr. Mayor?
And, yes.
Just a couple of questions of clarification. I realize we kind of grilled the staff at the 4 o'clock meeting, but could I ask just a couple of more questions since it is a first reading?
Before you started that, Councilor Urbanbach, would you mind if we read into the record item number 32 as well?
No, I would be delighted to have
Thank you so much, Councilor Urbanbach. We're going to read item 32, which is tied directly to item 31 as well. So item 32, please.
First reading an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the revised ordinances of the city, revising sewer utility rates and charges as found in Chapter 41, Utilities. Rate changes effective January 1, 2012.
Councilor Urbanbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome.
Mark, would you just clarify a couple of things for me? Could you go back to that slide that has the Sioux River South interceptor lines on it? Can you remind us, Mark, why it is that we think that it's a good thing for us to build this? Is there a problem that we're fixing with that particular sewer replacement project?
Absolutely. And one of the, as you track with that, Steve, can you point to the, you'll see that blue line, that is the existing sewer line. And we, as a part of the assessment, cameraed these lines and started to see significant liner failure, meaning once that protective liner that protects that, in this case, a concrete sewer pipe from the destructive natures of sewer gas, once that liner fails, in a very short time, we'll start to see the joint start to fail, which will allow inflow of water. And also we can get to a point where we could have, another risk that we faced last August. And so again, a part of this assessment is and you're always trying to manage, as Steve said, the life of your assets. But we are in a point here where with a new alignment, we would, in many cases, move it farther away from the river, because right now, even when this spring happened, when Skunk Creek whole watershed drain through. When that water level raised, we seen flows go up in this pipe, meaning we're getting inflow and infiltration into this pipe, water that we have to not only pump, but we also have to treat. So it is very timely to do this, and now with just the advances in pipe design and carrying capacity and smoothness factors, we would, and also just the extremely great bids that we received on the first 15,000 feet of sewer pipe that we've already bid this year, we would wholeheartedly recommend this. The other point is that line that goes north, that somewhat parallels Minnesota Avenue, that is to take flow off that segment of that basin. That's why we're going to upsize this and take it directly to the Tuthill so we can provide relief on some of those existing sewers in that area.
Can you tell me if these sewers, as they are now, the smaller pipe and they're cracking and all of those things, what has happened to neighboring areas when those pipes can't handle the amount of water that's going through them and we can't pump it through the Tuthill lift station fast enough? What has happened in those areas?
What's essentially happens is if a pipe has to compete and try to drain into a pipe that's already full, it starts to trigger a backup situation.
A backup,
which means you just can't drain your system, and that's some of the factors that we managed through last year. That's why we had to go into some of those neighborhoods, pump directly out of manholes and discharge to the environment, because we did not want to back up into people's homes.
And realistically, we hate to say this, but we know that we have sewer back up into people's basements in that area, in that Pam Road area, in the Phillips Avenue, 30th Street area. We know that, and we now, because of the studies that your folks have done, I'm amazed by how much we know about that system and how it cannot handle the amount of water that leaks into it. Then my last question for you is, Councilor Brown did say earlier that we run the wastewater system like a business. What does that mean to you? It's not really a business. No, we're not in it to make money so we can buy new cool pipes. We're in it because...
Well, essentially, it is run like a business because the fees we charge are the only revenue streams that come into those utilities. They're not supported by general fund or any other tax base. And so we run it like a business. And, we take pride in being in that lower quartile with our other cities that are in the area and even in the region. And quite frankly, we want to continue to stay in that area. We're a little bit ahead of the curve with the rate analysis this year, and that's why you haven't seen what those other communities have done or elected to contemplate with their rates. But I would assume if we run this in the last quarter of the year to reconcile what some of those other communities do, you'll see that Sioux Falls rates benchmark on the lower third with those communities in the region. But essentially, as an enterprise fund, we manage the operational costs, meaning all the salaries, all the cleaning equipment, all the chemicals that go into the plant, all the power needs, and also all the capital replacement. All the dollars that it takes to hire contractors to replace this pipe are all funded by the rates that we pay.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Councilor Brown.
Mark, our system is set up today, as you said, you pay for what you use, right? First of all, too, thank you for clarifying that it was sewer only. There were some misconceptions at the beginning of the meeting, and I don't want that to go out to the public, that this is sewer rates only.
Right.
But I also want to be clear, and Mark Cotter will never say this, but when he took over, those utilities were in serious financial straits. And had he not recommended those increases, today taxpayers would be subsidizing that water, the sewer and the water. And that means that you would not only be paying for what you use, but when your neighbor's wasting water or wasting sewer, putting more down the drain, you'd be paying for that too. It was irresponsible for our predecessors not to look at this on an annual basis and raise those rates for the cost of service and to invest in the future projects that this city needed. So to say that this council just willingly raises these rates is not true. If it was up to us, every single one of us would probably vote to keep these the way they are. It's not an easy vote, but Mark Cotter has done what has needed to be done to make sure that this will serve us today and tomorrow and down the road.
Councilor Rolfin.
I would also add to that we were the ones after the August debacle on our with our sewer line that asked you to put a plan together so that this will hopefully never happen again. And this is part of that plan, and you did a great job of putting that together. And so I thank you for that. Could you put back up that that chart of the city, all the cities, please? I think it's the other way. I was just interested in some of the. There we are. Whoop, back one.
Right there.
Yeah, there are some in there that are fees only. They just charge everybody the same rate, regardless of whether you have fixed charges.
Right.
Regardless of how much water they use, or how much sewer they discharge, and some of them are on kind of fee as what you use. And Sioux Falls has chosen to go with the volume that you discharge or that you use both on water and sewer, thinking that was the fairest way to go. If I choose to have my lawn looking so just like I do, I get to pay for that. If I choose to let it go brown and flush the toilet every other time, I get to live with that also, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Councilor Entman.
Mark, I got a question for you, too. Any good business always looks at the future and what those circumstances or what situations might pop up. And we all look at reserves. And you mentioned reserves, and it was mentioned by a couple of the other folks out here, too. Best practices, can you tell me about, when you look at your reserves, what kind of percentage do you look at carrying for reserves? And the second part of the question might be, when you look at those reserves, what are they actually used for when you plan into the future, when you look into the future?
Okay. We do have a slide on reserves. Okay, well, first and foremost, probably the most recent use of reserves is when the sewer collapsed. We did not have an issue with cash. I mean, we immediately called the bypass company, we called the contractors, and immediately went into that mode of let's fix this situation as quickly as possible. We also have looked at, we understand that when you run a business of this size, you need to have dollars in the bank to actually cash flow your operation. But at the end of the year, we'd like to have, for the operating side, 90 days set aside, which is basically $2 million. Now, throughout the year, that will increase, and it'll also ebb and flow, and it will decrease. But that's been our benchmark of how we cash flow projects, how we cash flow the operations, salaries, chemicals. We need to make sure we have that, because you don't get all of your ratepayers to pay in on day one. We collect revenue throughout all 12 months of the year. So that's the threshold, and honestly, that's a policy decision. That's been what we've recommended now for a number of years. It's worked good for the utility, and at this point I would stay with that. And so at the end of the day, that's the use, and that's the level of reserves that we cover.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilor Jameson.
Just wanted to weigh in as well. Last summer when we had the sewer collapse, we all, and maybe mainly the city and the public works, took a lot of heat for not having a system that was adequate to handle the sewage in our city. And certainly none of us want to raise rates, not at all. We don't want to be a part of that. But on the backside is, if we have a system that fails, that is far more a bigger lack of responsibility than maybe raising our rates in order to make the system sustainable. So it's a tough spot we're in, but I think it's far worse if we don't address the issue and have a system that collapses and cannot handle the needs of the city. So it's a tough spot. We're going to get beat up for raising the rates. That's just the way it is. But it would be far worse if we didn't address the problem and fix these sewers.
Councilor Jameson, thank you very much. City Council, would anybody like to set a date of a hearing and second reading for Monday, April 18th, 2011 at 7 p.m. for items number 31 and 32?
So moved. Erpenbach.
Second, Entenmann.
Councilor Erpenbach made that motion. It was seconded by Councilor Entenmann. Could I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmembers Entenmann?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
That is passed 7-0. Item 33.
A resolution including certain contiguous territory within the corporate limits of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, annexation 2011-0201, 57th Street and South Dakota Highway 11, Harmadan Park.
Again, I'm Mike Cooper, Planning and Building Services. Tonight we have a petition to add property into our city limits, and the petitioner is city staff. In this case, the property is located north of East 57th Street and west of Highway 11. It's approximately 67 acres of land area. And the purpose of the annexation is really twofold. One, as we continue to see development into the southeast area of Sioux Falls, there's going to be a need for additional storm drainage facilities. A portion of this property is an existing wetland, and it will help serve for future storm drainage needs of this area. And the second part of this is that as we look at continuing the redevelopment of, I should say, development of what will be South Dakota 100, the next mile starting from 26th Street and going to the south will incorporate the new design standard, which will be access at every mile. And so with that, the current access onto from Highway 11 to the east side of Harmadan Park will eventually be eliminated. So the other purpose of annexing this property is that it will provide for an alternative access from 57th Street to the south end of Harmadan Park. So really there's a twofold benefit to having this property available. And we started talking about this quite a while ago, and I'd just like to commend all the different city staff that helped put this proposal together because, again, it's going to help provide a number of benefits to the city as we see growth in this area and as we see the further construction of South Dakota Highway 100.
Mr. Cooper, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to this item? City Council.
Move approval, Aguilar.
Second, Anderson.
Councilor Aguilar has made a motion to approve item 33. It was seconded by Councilor Anderson, Jr. Hearing no further discussion, roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Entenmann?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
That is passed 7-0. Item 34.
A resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a master energy processing services purchase agreement between the City of Sioux Falls and Poet Biomass, LLC, a South Dakota limited liability company.
Ms. Conn.
All right. Mark Cotter again with the Office of Public Works. This is an exciting night for us as we've been under discussions with Poet on yet another contract between the sanitary landfill and Poet. This time it's with Poet Biomass. In addition to Dave McElroy, Fran Swain, the Senior Business Development Analyst with Poet, is here also tonight to address you. But just as a couple of points to set this up before Dave takes you through a brief PowerPoint, is this is truly a public-private partnership. There's a long-term need at the city as we look at taking our landfill to the next generation, and then Poet on its side has a real short-term need. And so combining the efforts and the equipment of both I think will be really good long-term going forward. One of the things you'll hear from Dave McElroy is landfill management's all about space. And the tighter, the more compact you can either compact the waste or recover more of those items that we put in the waste, the longer the landfill will be. You'll see some pictures tonight on when we demoed the first grinder back in 2009. And as you look at some of those photos, when couches and mattresses and all that stuff is thrown away, you'll look at that there's only really so much, we're somewhat limited on how tight we really can compact that type of waste. So when modern landfills are starting to go to grinders, there's no other grinder in this area with this type of technology. It is really specifically for waste. Again, Poet Biomass has a need that could also use this grinder short term. One of the things that after you'll see with Dave's presentation and then Fran's address, we'll work here to answer your questions. And then just also know when we engaged in this idea, we also on our side had our city attorney Dave Fifley on our team, as well as we had Mark Mickelson, as he's helped us with other business development contracts that are somewhat unique. He was engaged in the landfill gas contract as well as the carbon credits contract. And so anyway, with that, let's get started. We'll take you through a brief presentation of what we're discussing here.
Thanks,
Dave?
Mark. Dave, welcome.
Thanks, Dave McElroy, Sanitary Landfill Superintendent. Well, as Mark said, landfills are all about airspace and airspace utilization factor. So one of the things we look at to extend the life of the landfill is to do volume reduction. And right now, let me maybe... if I can reach here. Oops, go up. So right here is the permitted boundaries of the landfill. This is our expansion area to take us into the next 60 or 70 years. Right here is basically the MSW portion that we have capped off and closed with our landfill gas wells right now. The C&D landfill, which is primarily the portion of the landfill that we've benefited by this type of grinder, is approximately 30% of this area right here. The expected life of that area is about 2041. Some of the studies have shown that by using a grinder to increase the airspace utilization factor, you get a benefit of like a 33% gain. So theoretically, you could go from 2041 to 2050. You could get about a 10-year extension on the life of the C&D landfill. We are actually going through the process of a C&D construction and demolition debris material recovery feasibility study that will be completed this year, and then it's looking like that probably will be a beneficial thing that we'll be able to do, and we'll probably work that into our 5-year CIP plan down the road. This particular aspect we're looking at where we'd be setting up and doing the corn stover bale grinding would be in about this little section right here. So it's basically in a future part of the landfill. Next slide. This is an example of the type of waste grinder we're looking at. It's track mounted, mobile, so we'll be able to run it from that area down to the C&D portion of the landfill. We'll be able to run it over to the wood waste area as needed, as well as the compost. There's lots of beneficial uses that you can use. You can use it to grind food waste, green waste, yard waste, leaves, compost. Back in, we've been looking at this. I've been looking at this for a couple years, so I'm kind of excited that it's maybe finally coming to fruition. Back in March of 2009, we actually did a demonstration at the landfill, and that top picture you can kind of see is the setup down, and we set it up down in cell 1 of our landfill, and then we got approximately 30 to 50% volume reduction. And what that basically means is you take large, bulky materials, you chop them up, you're able to put it into a much smaller area. It's similar to like a jar full of rocks versus a jar full of sand. These are low speed, high torque pieces of equipment. They're pretty efficient, about a 10 to 12 gallon per hour fuel burn. As part of the C&D feasibility, we toured construction and demolition material recovery facilities in Wisconsin, Iowa, and Minnesota. Some of these pictures here showing the wood grinding operation in the top left. In the top right is a sorting facility where they take different types or different sizes of materials to different conveyor systems. Bottom left is, again, just a close-up of the wood. One thing you'll notice is that little bin kind of in the middle on the bottom. That's a metal bin. There's a cross-belt magnet that you can put on these machines to also recover metals and sell that for scrap metal value. This is a picture of basically a sort line, a sort and pick line, where you put the material on a conveyor. It gets conveyored up to this sort line. People would be separating out wood, cardboard, plastic, metals, and drywall. And basically, we're able to beneficially reuse or recycle that material as opposed to just landfilling it. And then at the end of that process, you could grind the wood for a fuel. You could also grind the residuals, the stuff that you cannot recycle and have to be buried anyway, to get that volume reduction like we talked about. This is a conceptual processing facility that we put together here, where basically kind of in the bottom left there you see a tipping area. So this is where the trucks or the materials from the residents would come in this tipping floor area. We would use an excavator to load it up onto this screen and conveyor system. Then it would go up to the top of this sort and pick line, and we're actually showing 6 different recovered material bunkers here for like metal, plastics, wood, cardboard, that kind of thing. And then at the end, off to the right here, you can see a wood grinder. So this wood grinder that we're able to now potentially purchase earlier than we would have normally done, where we'd be able to slot into this facility. So, because we have this unique public-private partnership with POET already, we're already sending renewable fuel, landfill gas, to the Chancellor ethanol facility. POET approached us with a unique proposal to store and grind the corn cob stover at our landfill. And basically this is corn stover that they intend on using at their cellulosic facility that they're building in Emmitsburg, Iowa. And so that facility won't be up and running for a couple of years. So it's a short-term need. We fill a short-term need for POET, and we basically have a long-term need for the grinder. So we would grind the wood waste at the Sioux Falls landfill. We'd also grind very small amounts of wood waste. The main thing we'd be grinding would be the corn cob stover that would be hauled in. POET's responsible for all the transportation. We are basically responsible to grind the material, load it, and unload the corn cob stover. The proposed agreement term, there's 3 different contracts, and we're looking at an agreement term of April 1st, 2011 to April 30th of 2013. And we're estimating that this will allow us to generate $441,500 in a alternative revenue funding source, with an estimated purchase price of the grinder of $565,000. So basically, something that we were going to have to purchase anyway, we'll be able to offset the majority of the costs of that purchase. So it's in a very simple layman's term. If you knew you had to build a $565,000 house 3 years from now, but somebody came in and said, hey, I'm willing to offset, I didn't crunch the number, but let's say it's 70% of the cost if you build it now, it's a good deal for the landfill, alternative funding source. With that, you want to go to the last slide? I think we'll let Fran talk real quick, and then we'll come up for questions. But this is basically what the material looks like right now before we bury it. So you can see there's plastic in there, there's wood materials, wood pellets that are currently just being buried, and those are items that we'd be able to pick out, recover, and beneficially reuse.
Mr. Swain, welcome.
Fran Swain, POET Biomass. I just wanted to say real quickly thanks for considering the agreement, and it's been great working with the Sioux Falls landfill so far. We have a landfill gas agreement in place with them, supplying landfill gas to our Chancellor facility. The Chancellor facility will also be the destination of this biomass, so we continue that renewable effort through to Chancellor. As senior analyst at POET, I've crunched the numbers, and this is the only viable option that we could come up with for handling this surplus biomass that's coming from our cellulosic efforts in Emmitsburg, Iowa. It offers us the ability to use equipment that is not available anywhere else in the area, and if this agreement doesn't go through, there will be little or none of this biomass going to Chancellor. There's other avenues that we can take out of Emmitsburg, and it'll go different directions. The nature of the equipment, the low-speed grinding, and the shearing capacity of that equipment is really what makes the difference. And in fact, that is the design that we've got specified for the Liberty project. So it is a specialized equipment that just happens to be used within the C&D facilities, such as the sanitary landfill is looking at. So with that, I guess I would answer any questions that you might have, and hopefully we can resolve any issues.
Mr. Swain, thank you. Before we do that, is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak to this item? Yes, welcome, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Henry Muller, and my wife and I own and operate Muller Pallets. Our business has been in the Sioux Falls area here for 31 years next month. And we operate a free service of grinding wood waste that also goes to POET. And I guess looking at the numbers that they're offering in their contracts, the city, I think, needs to do a little more investigating on the actual cost of doing the process, because for the numbers they're showing, I guess if the door is open for Poet to bring their product in to grind at that cost, I would like to bring my operation in there too and have you grind my product for me also, because I could save a lot of money. And I'm not sure what else to really say, but...
Mr. Muller, thank you very much. Yes. Councilor Anderson, Jr. Mr. Muller, would you mind staying here, please? Thank you so much. Councilor Anderson, Jr.
Mr. Muller, I think I was one of several council members that did get an email from either yourself or your wife, I believe.
Be my daughter.
Okay. And I guess what I've seen in other emails is that this issue was, I thought, pretty much resolved with your company. Now, are you losing any business by the landfill operating this? Or from what I read, that Poet was going to still continue their contract with you, and
yes, they are.
Okay, so you're not losing any business by us doing this, are you?
The possibility of extra volume going to that plant that they may need, but not now if they take from the landfill.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
Councilor Rolfing.
I have a question because I've met with Mr. Muller and have a few questions that perhaps Mr. Cotter could answer, or Dave. Dave, would you like to answer those? Go ahead and stay up here, Henry. Mr. Muller. One of the questions you had for me was the capacity or the expense at $8 or $9 a ton.
Yes.
I think maybe Dave, you could answer that. We were looking at a 16 ton an hour capacity on that machine, and wondering how we could make some money on that. Wasn't that right, Mr. Muller?
Not 16 ton per hour. It should be a lot larger than that.
Yeah, and I think when we did that, I asked the people here today, and they're looking at 65 ton an hour at $8 a ton, which would then make it a pretty profitable situation.
We've ground test loads for Poet Chancellor also on the corn stover. Corn stover does not grind anything like wood. A case of turning out 100 ton an hour of wood through our grinder, we were down to less than 15 ton per hour of a corn stover. It becomes wet, stringy, and really tough to grind.
Okay, so Dave, can you?
Sure. The type of grinder we're looking at is, as we talked about, a very efficient grinder. It's a low-speed, high-torque grinder. There are no other grinders like this in the region. I believe Henry operates a different type of grinder, so you can't really compare our grinder to their grinder. But it does burn 8 to 12 gallons of fuel per hour for our grinder. We have crunched that in. We did the pro forma, as Mark alluded to, that was checked and ran through with Mark Mickelson as well.
Okay, and you're fairly sure that or your manufacturer has assured you that, that this is the kind of performance we're going to get out of this?
Yeah, we are in our bid spec. We are putting in a minimum of 30 tons per hour, and yes, this machine is rated to 65 tons an hour. We don't necessarily think it'll do 65. We're hoping for 30 tons an hour is what we've built our numbers around.
Okay. Does that answer some of your question? Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Muller, thank you very much for coming here tonight. Dave, thank you. City Council, yes, Councilor Jameson.
Dave or Mark, maybe somebody help me. I'm pretty sensitive to the idea of the city maybe getting in the way of private enterprise. Can you just re-explain how this is not happening, and that reassure me that we are not interfering with private business?
Sure. Right now, none of this material is going to Mueller Pallets. We have a separate contractor. Mueller was actually the third highest bidder on our contract. They were the third bidder in it. This corn stover is something that's not currently being done by them, so we are not taking away any business. We are, again, as alluded to with the water reclamation, an enterprise user fee funded facility.
Ms. Cotter.
Yes, let me just expound on that. I think one of the things that, and normally when we bring a proposal to you that looks at a C&D recovery facility, and as you look in most construction dumpsters across the city, about 65% of that can actually be recovered and resold in separate commodities. Long term, that's where the city wants to be, because we know that every cubic yard that we do not bury in the landfill is decades that future generations will be able to have here. So long term, that's where we're going. And the short term need here is that it is the same type of grinder that Poet Biomass will ultimately buy at the Liberty plant in Emmitsburg, Iowa. We have the space. We have some logistics that work into our favor as they burn the wood from Mueller. There's ash that gets today trucked to the landfill. They can then take also a load of this corn stover and burn it. There's a number of factors that we looked at and also that Poet looked at to make sure that that this is something that we should get into, but also without any thought of coming into any private business relationship. That's not our intent. We also take a very low amount of wood into the landfill. Many people already go to their facility because it's closer, and I believe it's free. And so, you weigh those two possibilities. The landfill does not receive much wood today. Now, you will see in the contract there's 3 service orders. There's a service order to grind corn stover in 11. There's one in 12. And then there's a third service order to grind 1,500 tons of wood per year. That's a very small amount. The Poet plant can actually burn about 300 tons per day. And so the wood that we can actually grind and produce in a typical year is about 5 days fuel for Poet. We're not doing this to get into the business of crossing over and grinding more trees. They're set up for that. That's fantastic. It's the things long term that we're looking at is when you start to segregate those construction materials, that all the 2x4 cutoffs, all that plywood that gets thrown away, all those things can get recovered into a C&D facility recovery area, ultimately ground and burned for fuel. So again, short-term benefit for the city, short-term benefit for Poet, long-term for the city of Sioux Falls.
City Council, would anybody like to make a motion?
So move, Entenmann.
Councilor Entenmann made a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second, Urbanbach.
Second by Councilor Urbanbach. Is there any further discussion? If I have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Entenmann?
Yes.
Urbanbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
That's passed 7-0. Item 35.
A resolution changing 2 street assessments.
Yes. Ms. Feifley?
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 35 involves a special assessment regarding a street on South Meredith Avenue here in Sioux Falls. After that assessment was adopted by the council, there was litigation that ensued that was commenced by 2 of the 3 property owners. This resolution is necessary in order for a tentative settlement to be approved. What it would involve is the council action is necessary in order to compromise the special assessment that was done prior. The outside attorney who has been representing the city recommends approval, and the city attorney's office also shares in that recommendation.
Ms. Pfeiffer, thank you very much. Folks, is anyone who'd like to make a talk on this item? Very good. City Council?
Move to approve, Anderson.
Second, Urbanbach.
Councilor Anderson Jr. has made a motion to approve item number 35. It was seconded by Councilor Urbanbach. Hearing no further discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Entenmann?
Yes.
Urbanbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
That is passed 7-0. Item 36. Mr. Pfeiffer?
Thank you, Mayor. This is also a resolution regarding a special assessment. It was a sidewalk assessment imposed on North Westport Avenue. It was adopted at a January 13, 2010 City Council meeting. After this assessment was adopted, there were some issues regarding the construction of that done by the city. The good news is that remedial work has been done, and it is now corrected to the property owner's satisfaction. This involves only the cancellation of an interest and penalty, not the principal itself. And the amount of the assessment was $7,455. This merely represents $578.43 in interest. What transpired here was the property owner held her check waiting for the remedial work to be done. At the urging of Councilor Erpenbach, this resolution was drafted for the council's consideration. All it does is cancel the interest in light of the problems that had transpired. It does not change the actual installments. The property owner has been kept apprised of the situation, and I understand she may be here tonight also if you have any questions.
Mr. Fifely, thank you. And City Council, I apologize. I made a mistake. We should have read number 36 into the record before Mr. Fifely spoke. Would you please read it?
A resolution canceling interest and penalty on an installment of street assessment.
Ms. Fifely, thanks for the great summary. I appreciate that. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak to this item number 36? Very good. Councilor Erpenbach, did you have any further comments?
I have spoken with each of the council members about this. It is one of those cases where a citizen was doing her best to advocate for her property, and there were issues. The city's work did cause some damage to her property, and she was waiting for that to be fixed. She believed it was the right thing to do, to hold that check. She didn't realize, and I might say, we didn't make it clear that there is a warranty on all those projects. And so I would encourage, citizens in the future to make sure that they kind of advocate for themselves in that way. But this is one of those goodwill gestures that just, we all kind of goofed up on this, and we're just asking that interest be waived.
Councilor Erpenbach, thank you very much for your efforts on this. Councilor Erpenbach, would you like to make a motion on this?
I would love to make a motion on approval of item 36, please.
Thank you.
Second, Aguilar.
Councilor Erpenbach's made a motion to approve number 36, and it was seconded by Councilor Aguilar. Is there any? Yes, Councilor Rolfing.
I have a slight problem with this where I believe that all good intentions were there. I think we might be opening up a can of worms with this, and that anyone who then has a feeling that they've been wronged in this type of a situation, or even a minor situation, will then feel that they can withhold their payment so that they can just wait and see what happens. And I just, there's something that doesn't feel right about this.
Mr. Fifely, any thoughts on that?
Thank you, Mayor. I understand that the warranty period is 1 year, Councilor Rolfing. I think with this action tonight, no matter what happens, I think the property owners of Sioux Falls are further apprised that there is that 1 year warranty period, and I think notice has been duly given at a public meeting tonight about that warranty period, and I anticipate, based on your comments, I can predict that these types of requests in the future will not meet the same leniency if that's what's granted tonight.
Yeah, but it still doesn't, we're giving one, we're going to have to give another one. And there's a problem with that, I think. So my feeling is that it's just not the right thing to do.
Councilor Erpenbach.
I would disagree. The idea is that in this particular case, the city actually did harm to this property. And this property owner was advocating on her own behalf in the best way that she knew how. Yes, she could have read more fine print more carefully, whatever. But I think that we look at each of these cases individually, and if we're seeing more like this, where there has been a wrong being done, then we have other issues to deal with. I think we need to very carefully think about how we represent the citizens who elected us to this council.
Councilor Rolfing.
And on the same token, the bill could have been paid, and then the advocacy could have happened afterwards the way it should have been done.
Thank you very much, City Council. Great job. Let's vote on this. Item number 36. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Zentiman?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Rolfing?
No.
Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
That has passed 6-1. Thank you. Let's read items 37 and 38, please.
Report of March 26, 2011 insurance reimbursement for totaled pickup, parks and recreation. 38, report of March 28, 2011, notice of transfers of appropriations within major organizational units.
Thank you very much. We're now going to move to the new business portion of our agenda. At this point in time, I'm going to hand the gavel over to the chair or the head of the City Council, Councilor Greg Jameson. Councilor Jameson.
A resolution appointing the new council member from the Northwest District.
Well, this is a big item for the council. It's handled a little differently than other things that we do on the council, and I wanted to acknowledge that it is a distinct privilege for the council to do this appointment. It doesn't happen very often, and the responsibility is enormous, and we recognize that. We also want to thank the applicants for applying. We know you have a lot of other things you could do with your time, but you've chosen to participate in the city of Sioux Falls, and we appreciate that. This process will just go with the council's actions here. There is no public input involved, at least in this discussion, because we have had an opportunity in the past week to interact with, the public has had a chance to interact with the candidates and asking questions. And the council has had a chance to listen to those answers, talk individually with the candidates. So our actions here tonight is merely a voting procedure. So it may seem different than others that there is no opportunity for the public to come forward, but that has occurred. That time has passed. It's time to act. We've all received phone calls and emails, so we're, I think, all set to go. But we do need to have a nomination of the candidates.
Mr. Chair, I would like to nominate Dean Karski, Mark Millage, Marlon Thompson, James Eisbrand to the position of council member representing the Northwest District.
I will second that. Rolfing.
Okay, we have a nomination for Dean Karski, Mark Millage, Marlon Thompson, James Eisbrand to be considered. We will now have
Mr. Chair?
Oh, yes?
You might ask them to stand up so that the people in the...
Oh, sure. If the applicants could stand up and be recognized. Is that what you'd like, Councilor?
There you go.
Very good. Thank you. I'm not sure if you know what you've gotten yourselves into. So now what we're going to have is the clerk will read the roll call, and you'll need to tell us the name of the candidate that you would like to select. We'll keep score, so don't go too fast, so I can keep score as well. In the end, what we're after is a count of 5 votes and approval for one candidate. So roll call, please.
Entenmann.
Karski.
Erpenbach.
Millage.
Jameson.
Karski.
Rolfing.
Karski.
Aguilar.
Millage.
Anderson.
Eisbrand.
Brown.
Karski.
Okay, we have 3 for Karski, 2 for Millage, and 1 for Eisbrand.
I had 4 for Karski.
4? Did I say that wrong? I'm sorry. 4 for Dean Karski, 2 for Mark Millage, and 1 for James Eisbrand. Okay, the way we need to proceed is to drop off our lowest vote getter, which would be James Eisbrand, and now go with and obviously Marlon Thompson, who received none, and go with just Dean Karski and Mark Millage. So we'll have another roll call vote, please.
Entenmann.
Karski.
Erpenbach.
Karski.
Jameson.
Karski.
Rolfing.
Karski.
Aguilar.
Karski.
Anderson.
Millage.
Brown.
Karski.
Well, we have it settled. We have 6 votes for Dean Karski and 1 vote for Mark Millage. Dean Karski, welcome. Congratulations. Another 7.
No other choice.
Okay.
Councilor Jameson, thank you very much. Oh, I'm so sorry.
1 second. We need to adopt a resolution appointing Dean Karski. Would there be somebody who would like to make that motion?
So moved, Aguilar.
Second, Erpenbach.
We have a motion made by Councilor Aguilar, seconded by Councilor Erpenbach to appoint Dean Karski to the Northwest District. All those in favor say aye, or roll call vote, please.
Council members Intiman,
Yes.
Erpenbach,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Rolfing,
Yes.
Aguilar,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
That does carry 7-0. I will now turn the gavel back to the mayor. And Mayor,
Councilor Jameson, thank you, and City Council, thank you for your stewardship. Great job. First of all, I'd like to welcome Dean Karski up front, please. And Dean, if you wouldn't mind bringing your family with you as well, we'd appreciate that. I'd also like to introduce you to Judge Larry Long as well. Judge Long will be swearing in the new city councilor for the great city of Sioux Falls, Mr. Karski. We'd certainly like to welcome you as well, Mr. Judge Long. Please, welcome. Come on through. At this point, Judge Long, I'm going to hand over the microphone to you and let you do your magic. Thank you.
I think we're supposed to, if I've read the directions correctly, you're going to stand on that side, I'm going to stand over here. I'll let you take care of it. Are you ready? Yes. You repeat after me. Okay. Raise your right hand. Yeah, right hand there. There you go. All right. Please repeat after me. I, Dean Karski,
I, Dean Karski,
having been appointed
to
the office of City Council Member, Northwest District,
the office of City Council Member, Northwest District,
within and for the City of Sioux Falls,
within and for the City of Sioux Falls,
Minnehaha and Lincoln Counties, South Dakota,
Minnehaha and Lincoln County, South Dakota,
do solemnly swear that I will support
do solemnly swear that I will support
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of South Dakota,
the Constitution of the State of South Dakota,
and the Charter of the City of Sioux Falls,
and the Charter of the City of Sioux Falls,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office
according to the best of my abilities.
according to the best of my abilities.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And now we have to sign some stuff here. Okay, all right. You need to sign there. And I think I'll give this back to the mayor.
Thank you. No, that's okay, Judge. Thank you. Dean, sit down. First of all, I'd like to recognize the candidates who wanted, in the spirit of being good stewards, they wanted to actually represent the people of Sioux Falls and the people of that district to the best of their abilities, and I certainly want to recognize all of the candidates, including those, of course, who did not earn that honor tonight. However, Mr. Karski did. Councilor Karski did. And I want to congratulate you. I also want to let the people of Sioux Falls understand something. This is a city council that you cannot believe how seriously they take their role in a way that I guess I never imagined when I became the mayor. This is a city council that cares deeply about what they're doing. They care deeply about the city, and they cared unbelievably deeply about this process. They wanted to do it right. And so you need to understand this was no simple feat on their part, and they did it extremely well. Councilor Karski, welcome to the team. We're blessed to have you. You are an example of someone who sets a goal, may not hit that goal every single time, but doesn't give up on it. And through his diligence, he reached his goal, and for that, we're all blessed. So again, congratulations to you, Councilor Karski.
Thank you.
City Council, is there anyone who'd like to have any comments to our new council? Or yes, Councilor Entman.
This is different for Sue and I because we've had to shrink our spots. If you notice, we were spread out pretty big in here, Congratulations.
Thanks.
Well, City of Sioux Falls, congratulations. We now have a new city councilor, and the process works, and it works extremely well. That is the item number 39. Mr. Karski has been sworn in. We do have a new city councilor. And city council, as long as there's no other business, if I could ask for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn, Karski.
Councilor Dean Karski has made his first motion. Is there a second?
Second, Erpenbach.
It has been seconded by Councilor Erpenbach. City Council, if there's no further discussion, if I could have a roll call vote, please, on Councilor Karski's motion. I'd like it to be unanimous, please.
Council members Intamin.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Jameson.
Yes.
Rolfing.
Yes.
Aguilar.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Karski.
Yes.
Councilor Karski, that motion of yours has passed unanimously, 8-0. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, Sioux Falls.